You guys, Erin here, back with another moon update for you. And hallelujah, this is a lot more optimistic than the past few moon updates. We have made it through some very intense eclipses. Okay, that polarity that was going on between Taurus and Scorpio was very, very powerful, very transformational, but also very intense. I know I had an extremely intense experience a few days before the total lunar eclipse. I won't go into detail. I will just say I am very glad to be home and safe. Okay, now for some of you who know what I'm talking about, you might be giggling right now. Regardless, let's talk about this new moon we've got coming up here just around the corner on Wednesday, November 23rd at 2:57 p.m. Pacific time. Now, this is in the sign of Sagittarius, the very optimistic sign of Sagittarius. Now, as with any new moon, this is a time for new beginnings. This is a time to pull out our journals and write down what we want to manifest, what type of growth you want to manifest that is related to this sign of Sagittarius. Okay, I'm going to break down all this Sagittarius energy in just a moment for you here. It's really the sign of optimism, wisdom, adventure, all kinds of wonderful things. But and we're all experiencing this. We're all experiencing this as a collective, but it's also important to note that this is very unique to each and every one of us. And so much of this depends on where the sign of Sagittarius comes through your own natal chart. Okay, which house does 1 degree Sagittarius come through? That's the new moon is at 1 degree Sagittarius. Now, it could be coming through your house of career, your house of health, your house of communication, your house of karma, your house of relationships. There's all these different areas of your life that this could be coming through. If you get a reading with me, you get the video recording. So you can always go back and see which area of your life, any of these new moons or full moons, or really anything astrological is coming through your own natal chart. If you want to schedule a reading, go to erinwageastrology.com. You can schedule straight through my website. Okay, now, this sign of Sagittarius, it's the archer, okay? The archer that is always on an adventure to seek something out. In fact, the word Sagittarius, like the root of it actually comes from the word seek, okay? It's ruled by Jupiter, the Great Benefic. And not only that, but Jupiter at the time of this new moon is really an exciting placement. So this is a lot to talk about here. But this Jupiterian energy is all about wisdom, faith, optimism, adventure, has a lot to do with like expanding the consciousness. A lot of people who have a heavy dose of Sagittarius energy in their natal chart will find themselves traveling to long distance travels for the purpose of expanding their consciousness with wisdom and that sort of thing. It's a very faith-based energy, but again, it's also very adventurous and fun and optimistic. It's the mutable fire sign. Okay, when I say mutable, what I'm talking about is that it's very adaptable. Okay, now all the mutable signs have this strong tendency to just kind of be fascinated by everything. They'll hang out with all different types of people. The only downside to that is that sometimes it can be very difficult for somebody who's got a bunch of mutable energy in their natal chart. Sometimes it can be difficult to stay on track with one goal. So that's something to be mindful of when the sun is transiting through this fiery mutable energy. The fire signs, this is all about energy. Okay, this is all about it's like energy flying all over the place with this mutable fire energy. That's one of the things that I love about this sign of Sagittarius. I can kind of spot one from a mile away. You know, and that's not to suggest that everybody who's a Sagittarius is super optimistic and wise, and because there's so much more to the natal chart, but this energy in and of itself is it's a very beneficial energy. Again, it's very faith-based and very optimistic, fun, wise energy. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull up the chart here and show you guys all this stuff that's going on. I mean, honestly, this is to me anyway, it feels very exciting to talk about. Okay, so first of all, I work with geocentric Western astrology. With that said, we put Earth right here in the middle of this thing. This is basically a snapshot of the tropical zodiac at the time of this new moon. Okay. Now, again, this takes place on Wednesday, November 23rd at 2:57 p.m. Pacific time. So let's start by talking about the sun right here. Here's the sun at 1 degree. Here's the symbol for Sagittarius. Now, this is really like the first day of Sagittarius season. It's actually the second day, but we're in the very, very beginning of Sagittarius season. This is like pure Sagittarius energy. Once it gets into like the second, third day of Sagittarius energy, it starts to blend in with other zodiac signs. But 1 degrees, this is pure Sagittarius energy. And as we see right here, it's the moon right next to the sun. Anytime we have a new moon, it means the sun and the moon are in the same spot. In Western astrology, the sun is the father, the moon is the mother, and they're coming together to create this energetic baby, this baby that will grow, this energetic baby that will grow over the next 6 months until we have that full moon in the sign of Sagittarius. That's where that natural growth comes from. Okay, now, as I mentioned, 1 degrees, this is very, very, it's so exciting because it's just right in the beginning of this. And not only that, but as I mentioned, this sign of Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. Okay, now try and follow along here because this right here is Jupiter. And actually, let me mention something really quick here. This chart that we're looking at here, this is based on my location. Okay, to clarify, we will all be experiencing the sun and the moon at 1 degree Sagittarius, and we will all be experiencing Jupiter over here at 28 degrees Pisces. But if you take the time to pull up the chart and look where you're, based on your location, they could be in other parts of this zodiac, of this circle. Okay, because that's based on my location. Regardless, based on my location, this is great. Jupiter's just going above the horizon. I love this. Regardless, here's Jupiter. Jupiter also rules the sign of Pisces. Okay, Pisces is ruled by Jupiter and Neptune. Now, Pisces, here's the symbol for Pisces. Because Jupiter's in one of his own signs, he gets to work the way he likes to. And Pisces is this very mystical and spiritual energy. It's also a mutable sign. It's also very adaptable. It's emotional for sure. But this Jupiterian energy comes through here, making a very spiritual energy. Not only that, but we see these blue lines that are going from here to here. This is Jupiter making what we call a trine, or in other words, a very harmonious connection up here to the sun and moon in Sagittarius. That is beautiful. Okay, it's like Jupiter's harmonizing between his signs. Sagittarius is about faith and wisdom and optimism and adventure, all those sorts of things. Pisces is a little more mystical, a little more flowy. It's a water sign, okay? But they're harmonizing together. This is lovely. Not only that, but right next to Jupiter, about 6 degrees away, is Neptune, which is Pisces' other ruler. They're very close together. This is very Piscean energy, which is, again, it's very magical. It's very mystical. Now, the one downside to this is it's also a little delusional. So let's be very mindful of that. As Neptune's been going through Pisces, man, it's like everybody's having, well, I shouldn't say everybody, a lot of people are having these very intense spiritual awakenings. But also this energy is so mystical and so unearthly that it can create delusions. A lot of people are walking around deluded. Okay, be mindful of that and be very careful about where you're getting your information from. Always check your sources. Okay, so something else to mention here. I mean, really just looking at this chart, we see these blue lines. Well, let's start with this one right here. This is beautiful. This right here is Mars going through Gemini, which is a little silly, but at the same time, I shouldn't say silly. What it is, it's a fun and excitable energy. Mars rules how we put things into action. Mars is our drive to get up and go do what we got to do. And the sign of Gemini, it's the twins. It's a sign of duality. And that said, Mars doesn't get to be as direct as he wants to there. He's a little all over. He's like, oh, let's adventure over there, adventure over there. And a little, again, just has a hard time staying on track. So be mindful of that. But it's also it's an excitable energy. But really what I'm finding so exciting about this is that this right here is Saturn. Okay, now Saturn is a strict energy of discipline and responsibility. Okay, and in fact, Mars and Saturn, they're considered the malefics. Okay, they are the tough guys. They have a lot to do with our strength and our discipline and the structure of our body, our muscles, our bones, all sorts of things. But for the most part, they can be troublemakers. Okay. Saturn actually rules over chronic disease. Mars rules over acute disease and inflammation, all sorts of things. But they're actually harmonizing together as well. This is another trine going on between the two malefics. And personally, I really like, here's Saturn, again, going through the sign of Aquarius. And I've mentioned this in so many videos over the past year and a half, that I personally really enjoy Saturn going through the sign of Aquarius, because he rules the sign of Aquarius and he works comfortably there. And what I am seeing with this is a lot of Aquarius is this sign of humanitarianism. It's a little anti-establishment. Okay. And what I'm seeing is a lot of humanitarian groups or people that want to support the people are getting structured. They're getting together and they're using the real like wisdom of Saturn and the genius energy of Aquarius. And here Saturn is connecting with Mars, having a harmonious conversation. This could be very good for structure. This can also maybe keep an eye on the self-confidence. This can be a really good aspect for kind of diving deep into where your self-confidence is coming from. That's definitely a good aspect for that. Keep in mind, of course, all of this really depends on our own natal chart, what's going on, how these things are afflicting or affecting our own natal planets, our own natal chart. Okay, but for the most part, as a collective, that's really what I'm focusing on here. Okay, so that's a beautiful trine. Now also, well, I shouldn't focus on that because that's based on my location, but let's just talk about this real quick here. This right here is Uranus, which Uranus is this very spasmodic energy. We've talked a lot about Uranus and what it's doing right now. Uranus is, well, the ultimate goal of Uranus is freedom. That's why I love Uranus for that. Uranus is very, it's another one that's a little anti-establishment and revolutionary and technological. But he's struggling in the sign of Taurus. The sign of Taurus has so much to do with our money, our possessions, our farmlands, agricultural systems. And we're seeing some really kind of spasmodic changes and electrical sort of energy going into, I mean, even just looking at what's been going on with the crypto stuff, my goodness, and our farmlands. We've got Bill Gates buying up all the farmlands and doing weird stuff with our crops. That's very Uranus going to the sign of Taurus. But it's also very close here to the North Node, which is where celestial energy comes in. Okay, this is what it's doing. The North Node being so close to Uranus is it's making that Uranus energy going through the sign of Taurus even more powerful and extreme. Okay, so again, the ultimate goal of Uranus is freedom. I do think, and again, it's this revolutionary energy. I do think we are on the verge of an extreme revolution. I really do. I think a lot of people are getting fed up with the way that things have been going in the world. And I think that that's going, this energy right here that's creating this sort of weird and uncomfortable energy. I think it's getting people to the point of that they're standing up for their freedoms. Okay, now let's see here. What else can I mention here? I was going to point out that these trines, if you live anywhere near Santa Cruz or Los Gatos, California, anywhere in that sort of realm, then there is this beautiful trine going on from these guys up to what we call the midheaven, which has a lot to do with the public world, the status in the world, that sort of thing. Okay, so let's also point out here is Pluto going through Capricorn, which we've talked so much about this. I'll just mention this. Pluto is the destroyer for the purpose of a more powerful rebirth. Whatever he's going through, whatever sign he's going through, he's creating all kinds of destruction. But again, for the purpose of creating a more powerful rebirth, going through the sign of Capricorn. Capricorn rules over traditions, rules over the structure of our civilization, rules over authoritarian establishments. I mean, we can see all over the place what's going on with our government. I mean, it's very, very destructive energy. And we got really next year, in 2023, Pluto's going to pop into Aquarius, but then retrograde back. And then really 2024 is when Pluto will be completely done in Capricorn. And it is going to be fascinating to watch all of that unfold. A lot of very destructive, but also empowering energy going on there. Okay, but regardless, this Plutonian energy has a huge influence on our psyche. Pluto has a lot to do with what is going on back here. And he's actually making this more opportunistic connection over here to this Jupiter and Neptune and Pisces. This can also be a very spiritual energy, especially if you're going, my goodness, I've been giving a lot of readings to people that seem to be going through like the most transformational experience of their life. And a lot of it is very spiritual. Like I said, this Jupiter and Neptune going through Pisces is really opening people's consciousness up to, exploring all kinds of new avenues. And this is sort of opportunistic for that. This supports the very empowering and powerful, intense transformational process, especially if it's somehow connected to some sort of spiritual practice. Okay. Now, also, I forgot to mention this. This is also so exciting. So here's Jupiter, the key player of this entire, new moon transit. And just a few minutes, like he's in retrograde at the time of this new moon, but just a few minutes after that, Jupiter goes stationary and he won't be in retrograde anymore. And it's very exciting to me. I can't go into details why, but I'm really excited about that stationary Jupiter. This is in his own sign. This is very much about wisdom, faith, optimism, spirituality, mysticism, all sorts of things like that. Okay. Oh, also, I need to touch on this too. Can't forget about Venus and Mercury. All right. So this right here is Mercury. We'll start there. Mercury has a huge influence on what's going on in our mind. Okay. He's the messenger of the gods, and he has a lot to do with our communication skills, but he has so much to do. He's like the organizer of our conscious awareness. He takes information in and he has to file it away somewhere. And then when we want to pull that information back out, Mercury's got to go in and find that information and so we can bring it back out and communicate it. And going through the sign of Sagittarius, he's a little sporadic. Again, this is also an excitable energy. It's kind of similar to this Mars going through Gemini, like just exciting sort of mental, fiery energy. Be mindful of that. Neurons might be connecting at a rapid pace, but also this right here is Venus, which is very, very close to Mercury. And Venus can soothe some of that. Venus can kind of soothe some of those neurons that might be kind of going wild. Venus going to Sagittarius, this could be a little more optimistic for relationships. I know there's a lot of really intense relationships, energy that has been going on for so many people. I'll just leave that there. But this might bring a little more optimism. Again, keep this in mind that so much of this depends on your own natal chart. Okay, so I'm going to leave that there. Next thing I'm going to talk about is body parts. Okay, so the sign of Sagittarius, it really rules the hips and the thighs, has a huge influence on the sciatic nerve. In fact, it really has a huge influence on the entire nervous system. That has to do with the polarity that goes on between Sagittarius and Gemini. Okay, that watch the nervous system really all the way until kind of basically mid-December. All of our nervous systems might be going a little berserker while we've got this Sagittarius energy going on. And also be mindful of your sciatic nerve. Be mindful of not only that, but expansiveness. We've got some holiday seasons coming up here, and Sagittarius energy can bring some expansion in wonderful ways, but also be mindful of what we're consuming. Okay, now also some stones to mention here. So the real dedicated zodiacal birthstone for the sign of Sagittarius is turquoise. So in fact, I wear my turquoise ring a lot. Turquoise is a really good, it's like all reliable. Okay. This is a stone that can be good for pretty much anybody. As I've mentioned all the time, not all stones are for everybody. Okay. Some stones that are beautiful. A blue sapphire is absolutely gorgeous, but that's a particular stone that might not be good for everybody to be wearing. But this turquoise is actually a really good stone. Personally, I think everybody should have some turquoise laying around their house. There's so many other stones. I will leave a full extensive list, 20 or 30 stones that really resonate well with this Sagittarius energy. But keep in mind, again, that not every stone is for everybody. And what I encourage for people to do is take the stones, instead of putting them on your body, unless you know for sure, and by the way, I can give you guidance in that has a lot to do with the medical astrology training that I have been receiving. But this, if you don't know for sure if a stone is ideal for your vessel to be wearing on your body. Take the stones and put them on top of your journal after you write down what it is you're trying to manifest. That's what I always do. Okay. Because obviously I know what stones are good and what stones are not good for me to be wearing, but I still just take them and put them on my journal, especially the ones that I know are not good for my vessel. Hope that made sense. Okay. Now, this right here is blue lapis, which is one of my all-time favorite stones. It's just so absolutely gorgeous. And it's also very, very protective. Turquoise can also be very protective too, by the way. In fact, there can be this tendency for something to happen to the stones rather than your body. You know, if you're wearing a ring and your ring breaks, or maybe you had a piece of turquoise and it broke, in my opinion, that is because it was preventing something from breaking on you. And that could be physical or mental or emotional. Okay. Lapis can be really good for that too. And this also resonates very well with the sign of Sagittarius. And again, these are both very protective stones, but then also as an amplifier, as you're new to my recordings, what I'm talking about here is really the darker stones or opaque stones can be a lot more protective than things that are clear and shiny, things like clear crystal quartz. And what I'm about to show you is very clear and shiny. Okay, these guys right here, they're just so gorgeous. They are called Herkimer diamonds. And man, I have manifested dreams into reality with these guys. They're not real diamonds. They are a form of quartz. They can be a little protective, especially like this one right here has got some, I forget what it's called, but it's got the black stuff inside of it, which can offer some protection. But the real crystal clear ones like this, they are serious amplifiers. They can also enhance your intuition in a huge way. You might want to be a little careful with that, but they can manifest things. They can make things grander. They can expand the energy and amplify the energy. So I always take something that's going to amplify my prayers and keep my prayers protected, keep my vessel protected on my journal when I'm, writing down what it is I'm trying to manifest. Okay. I hope that made sense. All right. I'm going to leave that there. Again, if you would like to schedule an astrology reading, please go to my website, erinwageastrology.com. If you're on a phone or device, there's 3 lines at the top. That's a menu bar. If you click there, it's super self-explanatory from that point on. A little drop-down menu comes to show you where to book online. It's very, very simple process. Because a lot of times people, when you email me, I don't always see every single email. And I have a huge apology for that. I just spend so much time in front of these screens that a lot of times I'm not looking through every single email. It's much more convenient for both of us, really, if you just schedule straight through my website. Okay, guys, I do hope to hear from some of you. And until next time, namaste to all of you.